Good afternoon, everyone. Carousel Technology would like to welcome you to our DTech Apps webinar, Automated Signatures and Approval Made Easy with ServiceNow. Joining us today from Discover Technologies, we have Adam Moskoff, Senior Solutions Consultant. At this time, I'd like to hand the floor over to our speaker. Adam, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Brooke. Good afternoon, folks. Appreciate you making time for this today. As Brooke mentioned, we're going to be discussing forms automation and how that works with ServiceNow. This is sort of a sequel to a webinar we gave a month ago, where we were talking about different capabilities that can be provided to ServiceNow to allow people to work inside ServiceNow, but to deal with routing, creation of documents, signatures, approvals, everything else. My name's Adam Moskoff. I've been with Discover Technologies for over 4 years now, and I'll be presenting this. When you have questions, please feel free to ask them in the question box in the webinar, and we will try to address as many of them as we can at the end. The products we're going to be showing today to illustrate our solutions are the Doc Integrator Suite, which includes a capability which can generate documents from PowerPoints, Microsoft Word documents, and even existing PDFs. And I wanted to call that out because while ServiceNow can print to PDFs, what we enable, and as we'll see today, is the ability to take official government forms, whether state and local or DD forms or standard forms from the civilian side, and actually populate them with data without changing them from being official government forms. And we'll see that. So our suite also, which we'll be seeing today, allows you to integrate seamlessly with SharePoint. Now, SharePoint seems to be maybe not every single agency in the government uses SharePoint, but all of them, but I think 2. That might be a slight exaggeration, but it's pretty common everywhere. Our Doc Integrator solution allows us to integrate SharePoint document management capabilities into ServiceNow. And you'll see what that looks like. But basically, you can stay in the ServiceNow environment without ever leaving it, but keep your documents in SharePoint, take advantage of SharePoint role-based access controls and document management and rolling back to previous versions, etc. And so that solution, combined with the power of the ServiceNow platform, allows us to address forms automation and digital signatures in multiple ways. Obviously, forms automation matters. First of all, of course, we have the 21st Century Integrated Digital Experience Act, IDEA, where Congress is pushing the agencies to modernize, right? To automate forms, to get rid of ink signatures, et cetera. But I mean, regardless of that, everybody in the public sector has to deal with a ton of forms and automation, and it's painful, right? Whether you're onboarding and you need to request access to 7 systems and you need to fill out some 401k information or anything else, the bureaucratic trail is difficult and there's a lot of hoops to jump through. So the ability to automate creation of forms where there's not mistakes and to route them to the people automatically who need to view them, approve them, sign them is a huge need for the federal government. And being able to leverage ServiceNow to do that is a big deal, especially to make it easy. I mean, right now, there are at least 23,000 US federal government forms. I don't even want to get into the billions of hours we're spending doing this. And we spend an awful lot of money doing this. So if there's any way that we can automate the approach where people can spend less time creating forms and routing forms, they get notified of their task, which is review this and sign it, and they just do it and it gets done. That can be a huge savings, not just from the bottom dollar, but also for everybody who spends too much of their time just routing forms rather than doing more productive work. So forms automation, which we're going to be presenting, is what we built on the ServiceNow platform. It allows you, as I said, to leverage existing PDFs. You can generate Word documents and PowerPoint decks. You can even automate, for example, weekly status reports, so you don't have to create those anymore. If the data's in ServiceNow, which it almost always is, you can take that data, you can fill out a form, you can fill out a PowerPoint, you can fill out a PDF, and then you can route it to whoever needs to see it. And you can save a lot of time and spend more time doing higher value add work. In addition, because it's all in ServiceNow, rather than email or anything else, which tends to happen all the time, you're then able to get things like audit trails. You can start tracking, how long does this take? Where does it slow down? How do we make it better? So having a single source of truth for this data, whether it's for audits or whether it's just for continuous improvement, is huge. So, for what we're showing today and our ideas of how we're helping other agencies already automate forms, is you can have forms built out automatically and then sent out tasks to people. You can work inline inside ServiceNow to fill out forms. But even then, the concept for us is you don't have to fill out very much at all, right? It should pre-populate. Now, we're not at a point, the government's not at a point, nobody's at a point where we're going to trust it without eyes on and the ability to make changes. So for us, you can take a PDF, you can take a Word document, you can select it. You can even have ServiceNow automatically populate that form with information. But then the most important phase is before signing anything, or even potentially before routing it, as we'll see, being able to say, yes, all this information is correct. Let's verify it with human eyes, and then kick off that process. And we have three primary ways we've envisioned of triggering this. The first one is a user comes into a portal, right? A ServiceNow portal, and they need to open a ticket, or they need to fill out a form, or maybe it's a change of life. They just got married. So they can make a simple request in the ServiceNow portal. We have an agent-based approach, right? I'm an HR person, we're onboarding a new person, and they need to fill out 7 system, authorization or system access authorization requests. They need to fill out a license agreement, a SIP or NIPper agreement, whatever it is. That can get triggered by a person clicking a button inside, say, HR or inside a change ticket. And then what we showed last time, and which I'll be covering briefly again this time, is the automated initiation, where you can just do your normal work inside ServiceNow. And when something happens, right, an HR case goes from draft to ready, i.e. it's instantiated, it starts. It actually kicks off a process saying, hey, these forms are now automatically built out for the person we created. So we'll show both the agent and automated initiation today. But for those of you, who are interested in the catalog request, it's easy enough, to create a ServiceNow catalog entry like we can see right here in the picture, where we just make it easy for someone to go to the catalog and say, hey, I just need to put in a system access request, right? And they find it, they click on it, they fill out the system they want, they hit go. And then behind the scenes, it fills out the form. It provides them with an interface to sign it, and then it routes it to the supervisor and the security officer and everybody else. It's very straightforward. The automated request, which we showed last time, is simply my HR case, as I said, goes to ready, and it triggers a whole workflow to take care of everything automated, where you don't have to manually route anything. And then what we're going to show today as well, first, as a matter of fact, is the agent request initiation, which is you got, say, a core, contract office representative who needs to kick off a form, and they press a button, right? They verify data, they press a button, and that instantiates the flow. So, digital signatures are a challenge. And this is the last slide before we get into the demo, I promise. But this is important stuff, right? We spend a lot of time doing digital signatures and routing. Right now, for the most part, everybody seems to email these around, and then you save it to your desktop, you open it up, you use something like Adobe or DocuSign to digitally sign it with your PIV or your CAC. Then you reattach it to a new email, send it back, somebody else grabs it, loses the old one, and then forwards it on to someone else, right? It's a tedious process. It's hard to do digital signatures. The government doesn't yet really trust e-signatures, which are much easier to do. And so the ability to automate both the routing of forms and creation of forms, but also to facilitate using your PIV and CAC in a much more painless way, which we'll see, has a lot of value for our customers. So now I'm going to jump forward into the demo, and I'm going to be playing a few different roles today. I'm starting right now as someone named Rob Joy, who the real one will actually be giving a presentation when I'm finished, if we have time. But in this case, Rob is playing a contract office representative. And this is a scenario we built out for a customer of ours in the DoD. They had a specific need, and I'm showing it to you both for the art of the possible and also to help folks realize that there's lots of different ways they can do this. But in all ways, the idea is to make it simpler and easier for regular people to be able to do their jobs. So in this case, right, Rob's job is when onboarding new people, the assumption is they already have an ID card, a CAC, because they're DoD, or a PIB for civilian folks, that they need to be able to get their system access requests for whatever systems they have. So we built out a simple form. This is an application on and in ServiceNow, which allows you to collect, make sure you have the right data, and then it creates these forms and routes them to the right people. So Rob is the core, right? It's in a state of I'm the core. He needs to verify that all this information is correct. Now, this does not all need to be filled in by hand. Almost all, if not all of this data exists in a database somewhere, and most likely ServiceNow has access to it, whether it's a user table, whether it's the actual system behind your CAC, you authenticate with a CAC and it's got data on you, we can pull that data automatically. So you just pick Adam as the person, and then it'll pull in all the data. But we also recognize in our customer, and the DoD also recognize that that data might not be 100% correct. So the core's job is you pull it, it automates it, right? It fills all this stuff automatically out, which is great. Core's job simply to go over it and make sure it looks good. Now, because that's not always the case, the core may fix something, that's great. The core may miss something or not be aware of something. So when the core is done and hits go, it now kicks off a process to the requester. In this case, it is Adam Moskoff. So I'm going to switch browsers and go over to, you can see this updated contractor review, but go over to my Adam Moskoff. Adam Moskoff is a guy who's requesting this system, this SAR form, and Adam is going to get an email. And that email is going to look like this. Hi, Adam, welcome aboard to the organization. Please click on this link. So Adam just has to click on the link. You can see I'm logged in as the real me, Adam. And as you saw before, we see this again. I have a form here where there's stuff I can change. Now, realistically speaking, I might not be able to change very much as the end user, as the person doing the request, right? I might not be able to change who's my supervisor. I might not be able to change, what networks I need access to, or my persona. I can't pretend I'm a, military person or even a Fed if I'm a contractor. But in this case, for this use case, I do need to verify that everything is acceptable, right? That everything's kosher. And I can go through, I can make sure all this looks good. Maybe I can change, my phone number if that's been updated, maybe my personal email if that's been updated. I can verify that this looks correct, right? My supervisor is right. I don't know about these people because, I'm just onboarding, but at least I can see who they are. And I confirm that this is done. Once I've confirmed the data, this is where our forms automation really kicks in, right? It was routed to me to look at the information. And all I have to do is make sure that it looks great. And then once I hit confirm, our process behind the scenes is building out the PDFs, and it could be more than one, that I need to sign, right? We see, please, and I have simple instructions, right? I need to fill out my cybersecurity awareness training certificate. That's mandatory for getting network access, right? Please open and sign my 2875s and my DISA user agreement forms, and then just validate that it's okay. We're showing obviously a 2875. You can see it was already built here. We'll also be showing a DISA form being filled out. That's much simpler, but it's still valuable. But one thing I want to call out is even though we're showing a 2875 being built here and a DISA end user agreement form, this could be anything. This could be changing your 401k, tax or how much money you want going into your 401k. This could be a change of life status. This could be any form you have, which you have to automate, and it gets built automatically. You get to verify the information and then you sign it. So as we see here, we have everything built out. And so following my instructions is please upload my cybersecurity awareness training. I want to call out our Doc Integrator solution, which has been used to build these forms out, has also put them in SharePoint automatically. I'm still in ServiceNow. I never leave ServiceNow, but the documents themselves are in SharePoint. That gives me the ability to have SharePoint lock them down, to have the security in place. Everything can be encrypted at rest and in motion. lets me leverage all of the awesome things that SharePoint provides to everyone, but it also lets me get past some of the tedious and difficult parts of SharePoint. But we always have a statement that if you have 7 people who are asked to work on one form in SharePoint, you end up with 7 people in 7 different locations with 7 different forms. So our solution handles which form and where is it in SharePoint. So we get to take advantage of the goodness of SharePoint, but we get to get rid of the complexity, the SharePoint sprawl, all those other problems. So my first assignment is to upload my cybersecurity awareness training certificate. So leveraging our Doc Integrator solution, I just click on a button here, and I can either click here to choose files, or I can even drag and drop a file from somewhere else onto this screen. So I'm going to come in, browse, find my, where is it? There we go. My cybersecurity awareness training certificate, and I'm going to upload it. It's that simple. It has now uploaded it directly from my desktop into SharePoint, but it makes it available here in ServiceNow for perusal. My next thing is I have to review and sign these 2 documents. So with a simple click, I can actually open up this DD2875, which is built out on my desktop application. This is one way of getting around the digital signature challenge. I don't have to download it. I don't have to re-upload it afterwards. This document right here is still living in SharePoint. I'm just opening it up on my desktop app, just like if you went directly to SharePoint, you right-clicked and said open a desktop application. And there's different ways of handling that, whether through OneDrive, whether through SharePoint, but it makes it really easy. And as Adam Moskoff, we can see everything was filled out today, right? Today's date is the 28th at 10:53. It's apparently on left coast time. And then I just digitally sign it, right? I grab my CAC because I'm using Adobe Acrobat Reader for this. And Adobe Acrobat Reader does work with CAC. So does DocuSign. We can work with all sorts of stuff. But I signed it. It's digitally signed by me. It locked the first part, right? It obeys the official government form. It locks it as it should be locked. Before I go ahead, I do want to point out that it's also filled out all the other relevant information. So we can see my supervisor's info has been filled in. So she has to sign it, which we'll see in a moment. You can go to the IO, it can go to the ESO, and all their stuff is filled out, right? This is forms automation at its basics. But as the end user, all I have to do is sign it and then check it back in. We have it set up so that it checks out and checks in, so nobody changes it while I'm signing it. That's a user preference. And I have to do the same thing for the DISA user agreement. So I go in, I'm checking out the DISA user agreement. This was also built out for me. And again, let me just reiterate, this could be any number of forms, right? This could be 15 forms. This could be 7 DD2875. So whatever you need it to be. This one, it was very simple. Put my name in, the date, my division, and then I just sign it again as myself, saying, I agree, I promise not to mistreat any of your equipment disks, and we can move on, right? So I check it back in just like before, and I'm done. I mean, everything's been updated. No uploading, no replacing old files. It's all in here. So I've done the instructions. I've reviewed and signed these. I've uploaded my cybersecurity awareness training form, and I just hit, I'm done, submit. And now, let's see, we're going over to my supervisor. Who's next? Joaria. So my supervisor is a woman named Joaria Nadim. She's going to get an email saying, hey, Joaria, your new employee just filled out some forms and you need to do your thing. So she can come in. We built a very simple portal to show it, where we can see this Adam Moskoff person here, right? This is one of the 3 forms she has to look at. All she has to do is click on it. She too gets a chance to validate my data. This could be more or less data depending on what you want the supervisor to see. It might just be my username and my first name and last name and telephone number. It might be the whole kit and caboodle. All that's configurable. But the most important part is down below, she has access to all the files here. Same files I was looking at, right? Without any uploading or downloading. She can click on this and make sure that it was filled out. She can make sure that I signed the DISA user agreement properly. And of course, inevitably, she too has to open up the 2875 and review it herself. Make sure I filled everything out properly. Make sure it's all filled out, signed by Adam. She can come in and she can say, just authorized access, right? It's unclassified and classified, whatever it is, she agrees. And then all she has to do is digitally sign it, right? So she will sign it with her CAC. And then she's done. It's that easy. She just makes sure the form's right. As a supervisor, that's her job. Next, obviously, you can see it's going to go to John Martin, who is in this case, the information owner. But from Joaria's perspective, she verified all my documentation. She signed it with digital signatures, from her CAC. And all she has to do left is say, all right, I'm done. I'm going to approve this. And she approves it. And that's it. Now it routes to the next person and the next person and the next person. So it's an easy way of dealing with it. It's all integrated with email. You get notified when it's your turn to do something. You click on the link in the email, you do your job, and you're finished. So it's super simple, super straightforward. And that's sort of what I wanted to focus on with this one, is both taking advantage of SharePoint, which allows you to make all these changes without downloading and without uploading. You can just work with the files. They're kept in SharePoint where it's safe and secure. But you can still do the easy things like use your digital signature capabilities inside Adobe right here, which works with everything. And it could be, just to reiterate, it could be DocuSign, it could be something else. It's whatever your poison of choice is for digital signatures, but it's that straightforward. So the next piece of the demo I wanted to show is an HR, and this is sort of a rehash of what I showed a month ago. I believe that on our YouTube channel, or maybe on our website, we have a recording for those of you who are interested of that webinar, which goes into a lot more detail about what I'm about to show you. This is sort of a highlight for the new folks who haven't seen last month's demo. So I'm going to once again go back to the famous Rob Joy. In this case, Rob is going to be initiating everything from HR. So, oops, let me fix this for 1 second. So when Rob comes into an HR, and this is an account access request, if that sounds familiar, Rob is going to have this in a draft state, which I forgot to reset it to after my last test, but that's fine. Rob comes in, Rob has a new case. This Adam Moskoff guy is onboarding, right? This is the same use case as before, just handled in a very different way. And we can see that there is a draft, state draft here, and he fills out the information. All of this is workflow driven, and everything is great. So when we put this state into ready, right, whether we click ready for work or we do anything else, let's just do ready for work, it's now going to kick off a flow behind the scenes, a workflow, which then goes to all the necessary people so that they can get notified via email, come in, look at the forms, sign the forms, do whatever they need to do. So the first person, like before, is Adam Moskoff. That's me, right? I'm the person they're building these forms out for. Let me close some of the old stuff. There we go. Okay. So as we can see right here, we have already my first signature. And this is different, different interface, but same concept. I click on the form and I can see right here that same DD 2875 with the information basically filled out with justification. And then I hit my digital signature and I sign it in line. In this case, it's e-signature. What Rob will be presenting later is something else, right? He'll be presenting how we can do this with downloading, signing. But the valuable thing is, let's say we got the address wrong here, 18500 Signature Lane, right? We can update with inside the ServiceNow experience. We can make changes. We can do whatever we need to do prior to signing. And then when we're done, we hit assignment completed. This is really cool. This is what we call our viewer. It means you can do everything in ServiceNow without opening it up in your local Adobe Acrobat Reader. You can make your changes. When I completed my piece, it now routed to my supervisor, who once again is Joaria. And so Joaria now she gets an email saying, hey, we need a supervisor signature. And she can now come in and look at this form. As you can see, it even picked up my update without me having to do anything, saying 18500 Signature Lane. She can verify my signature, and then she can come in and do her own signature. It's that easy. And when she's done, assignment completed. And now it just routes to the next person. So all of this is straightforward. All of this is easy. This is our new feature set we're coming out with, which is really focused on how can you stay in the ServiceNow environment? How can you do your job easily? How can you handle all the routing in ServiceNow, but take advantage of all these other systems out there, right? Take advantage of SharePoint and OneDrive for storing stuff. but really just make it easy for the business users not needing to be IT professionals to understand this. So that is, that's sort of the demo I'm showing today. I will come back to Rob and say he'll be able to track everything in here. When the form is finished, it gets uploaded to his HR case. That's another advantage of leveraging SharePoint, and even the ability to track the document signatures as needed. Who's done what? Where are we? It's just an automated process. So that's it for my portion of this demo. I'm going to hand it over to Rob really quickly, and then Rob's going to show you the art of the possible, and then we'll come back for questions and answers.
I'm just going to talk through some of the scenarios that we support. I was going to do a demo, but there are so many different scenarios that I just want to try to give you a little bit of a flavor of what we're doing. We support upload, download. So when you have to go to the desktop to sign the file, that's a lot of scenarios in the government are going to require you to go to the desktop today. It's still, unfortunately, what's having to happen because the browser cannot get access to the signature credential on the desktop. So what we've done, and Adam showed you a little bit of this, when the viewer's available and you're doing it in the viewer, you will see a wizard when you have to download to the desktop, where you could just say download file. When you click on download file, these instructions are configurable per form or per document, and you can put them in yourself and define how you want the instructions to look for what the user has to do. In our experience, there are a lot of executives that come in and have to do forms for some of the document management capabilities that we've supported in the government, and the executives are not used to ServiceNow. They're not familiar with ServiceNow. So we've created an experience that's just like, hey, sir, or ma'am, here's exactly what you need to do. And it's easy and simple to do. And even if you have to go to the desktop, we're giving you instructions. You need to take this file to the desktop, then you need to follow the instructions. When you click on download file, it's going to, it's just taking over. It's going to actually download the file to your desktop and prompt you like, hey, you've downloaded the file. Don't forget to go through these instructions. This particular confirmation window, if you do this all the time, you're not going to need to see this all the time. So you can say, don't show again. But you're going to get a confirmation like, hey, don't forget the file's on your desktop. You open the file up, and then you process the file, and you load it back up into this screen. You'll get an upload, the ability to choose the file that you downloaded, and you can bring the file back up. And once you've brought it back up, you can mark your assignment complete. So even in scenarios where you cannot get it to work in the browser, we're able to support through download and upload. We are also working closely with Microsoft on another scenario where, as Adam showed you before, it lives inside of SharePoint, and you have OneDrive on your desktop. So in those scenarios, Adam showed you the open an app a few minutes ago. If you're inside of our Doc Integrator product, which can be connected to any ServiceNow app in Workspace and Platform and Portal, wherever your app lives, the Doc Integrator product can connect to the app. And the list view that Adam showed you allows you to download the document. You would not need this wizard in those scenarios. In the scenarios where you are just signing a document, you've got Microsoft project and you've got like a whole bunch of files, and there are 4 of them that need signature, you can mark those for signature, and your executives would get this screen so that they could then say, okay, here's the file that you have to sign. And the open an app would work similar to the way that Adam showed, where when you click on that, it's actually going to go out to OneDrive and say, hey, do you want to open this file? And then when you open that file in OneDrive, you're going to get that same confirmation like, hey, that file that you just opened, follow these instructions on it. And then when you're all done, you're going to get a go ahead and mark your assignment complete. So again, the scenario here is you've got all your files in SharePoint, but your executives are just getting a very specific instructed, here's what you need to sign. The other scenario that we support is there isn't any signature required, and you can do everything in the viewer. Adam showed you that too. You just finish your work in the viewer, hit assignment complete. And I'm gonna stop there. I mean, that covers most of the scenarios that we've seen, and I'm gonna hand it back to Adam so we can do some Q&A.
Took me a second to find the mute button. Thank you, Rob.
Yeah.
All right, let me pop open my PowerPoint and then we will get to the Q&A. All right, let's see.
You want to handle the Q&A ones, Adam? I can read off the ones that come in from chat.
Sure. I've got them all right here though, I think. So let's see, let me move my chat off screen and then I've got the Q&A and chat as needed. So let me start with the ones which were put into the question and answers. First one is, did the digital signature function comply with the 21 CFR Part 11, which is an FDA request or requirement? And so the advantage of what we saw being able to open things up in Adobe is that Adobe does support 21 CFR Part 11. So you can leverage your existing Adobe solution with what we showed. So the answer is yes. And then somebody else has asked, they have DocuSign and Adobe Sign integrations with ServiceNow and other tools. What's the difference between our solution and the DocuSign and Adobe Sign integrations? That is a very long and nuanced answer, but the short version is that it's a matter of licensing. So if you want to build out DocuSign or Adobe Sign, you need professional versions, amongst other things. Additionally, you need to install it in systems and make it available. What we leverage with our solution is the ability to replace those very expensive solutions with Adobe Acrobat Reader, for example, or another tool. And our solution lets everybody leverage those tools, free tools, which still works with CACs and PIVs on the, in the public sector, are fully approved. You can now use those for digital signatures without, like DocuSign, for example, where you're basically paying per transaction. And if you have an entire agency doing it, it's super expensive. We can provide tools. You can still use those if you want, but we can provide tools which are much more cost effective. Third question is, was I showing Washington, D.C.? I was showing Vancouver. We fully support, we are certified apps. We already fully support the Washington, D.C. version of ServiceNow. My other instance is already on the pre-release of Washington, D.C. So what I showed was Vancouver, but we work on Washington, D.C. just fine. And then the last question in the Q&A section was, does Adam need any ServiceNow roles to verify the data fields? So this really depends, Kevin, based on how you set this up. So what I showed in the first one would be the Rob Joy character, who was the core, would need a platform license as well as a doc integrator license in order to fill out any fields and make those changes. However, the requester most likely would not need any ServiceNow roles to do that, or at least not any licenses. And in fact, could also leverage some of our other solutions, such as Tasker, to verify those data fields. So it really depends on how you want to build it. I know that's not super clear, but we could build it out so it was done via catalog, in which case you don't need any particular roles except SNC external, which everybody has, or it could be a more nuanced platform requirement. And that's really up to you and how you want it built. My next question is, where did my chat go? There we go. Okay, wow, bunch of questions.
Some of them I've already answered, but you can still call them out and answer them publicly.
If you want to call them out, John, so I don't have to play catch up, that would be great. I can do the David Ball one. So is there a DoD requirement to be on a ServiceNow IL5 hosted instance to be integrated with SharePoint? No, absolutely not. So if you're DoD and you want to be, if you want to connect to an IL5 SharePoint instance provided by Microsoft, yes. If you want to connect to an IL4, then you need to be on ServiceNow, which is IL4. So basically, ServiceNow needs to be on the same FedRAMP level and impact level as well that the SharePoint solution is, because it depends on your organization. With civilians, most likely you're IL2 or FedRAMP moderate. And so those requirements are simply, you need to be the same for same. So IL5 to IL5, IL4 to IL4, those are the requirements. But it's not specifically IL5, although I think that might be what you meant. Let's see. Kevin had another question. Since the PDF was signed and you updated the signed document, is there an audit where we can see the history of the data change? Absolutely. So a couple things we can do. One, don't forget that that PDF is in SharePoint. So every time and it never leaves SharePoint, it's not downloaded and then re-uploaded. So every change you make in SharePoint is captured inside SharePoint, and you have the ability not only to see when those data were changed, but also you can roll back to previous versions as well. We do not override that. So we can see Adam Moskoff was in here, and this is where he changed his email address, and we can roll back to the previous version. We can see that change. All that auditability is 100% there. Let's see, is this on-prem or just cloud? It is all of the above. And we can have an on-prem ServiceNow instance talking to a cloud-based Microsoft Office instance and vice versa. So yes, we can work with you. We can work with you also at the super sneaky levels, the SIPRs and the JWICs. We support ServiceNow. So as long as you have a ServiceNow instance, we will plug into it. John already answered that. Sorry, John.
No, it's good for the whole group to hear.
I'm sorry. What was that?
It's good. It's good for the whole group to hear the answer. And these are all private answers that I have in the chat window.
Okay, fair enough. All right, is the doc stored in SharePoint or OneDrive or both? That would be a both. So SharePoint sits on top of OneDrive. So anything you put into SharePoint by its nature also happens to be in OneDrive, though not necessarily vice versa. We go directly to SharePoint, but we also can now go directly to OneDrive, which is what Rob was showing with his PowerPoint. So we have different capabilities, but I would say for what we saw today, primarily SharePoint is where it was, but we also support OneDrive. And then Kevin has a question about a cost analysis. We would be happy to work with you on costs and prices. So if you want to reach out to us at info@dtechapps.com or call the number, we would be more than happy to sit down and help you put together that cost analysis based on your DocuSign costs and what it would cost to work with our solution. Okay, so question on defense logistics. Yeah, so we would love to sit down and talk with you, Tahani. I'm not giving out your last name, I promise. You know, I'm glad you're appreciating the webinar. We would love to sit down with you, talk about how we set this up. And the question is really, how do we set this up? How do we get this working? What's involved? Is it going to be 200 years of, implementation services? We would love to walk you through how this works, what the process looks like, find out a little bit more about your use case, and then put together a rough order of magnitude so you can better understand what's involved and how are we defining processes? How hard is it to automate a new process? How much time does it take to do a new form, which might route to 7 people or even make it dynamically routed based upon pulling data? So these are complex questions, which, I can't answer here, except to say that this was designed for real business.
Commander Eric, loud and clear. We'll reach out, sir.
Yes, sir. We'd love to have that conversation with you.
Adam, you also have one from, it looks like the minimum David Roosevelt. Do you see that one?
Yes, I was about to get to that one. What's the service minute English? What are the minimum ServiceNow application subscriptions was the question needed to work with Doc Integrator. So our tools can plug into every ServiceNow application you already own, but there is no for any of them. So if you have an existing ServiceNow instance, you can buy our tools and plug it in and give everybody access to it. But depending on how you want to run automation, like if you want to run a system access request out of, say, a change ticket, for example, then you'd probably want change licenses. If you want to run it out of HR, like I showed, you'd probably want HR licenses. But there's no mandatory ServiceNow licenses for any of our stuff. It's really based on you just having a ServiceNow instance we can take advantage of.
Do you want to answer the on-prem versus cloud?
I thought I did do that.
Yeah, he did.
Just to confirm.
But just to reiterate,
yeah,
we support on-prem and cloud, and any mix where you might be like one of our customers in the DoD has an on-prem ServiceNow instance, but they're talking to Army 365, which is the Army Office 365 instance for SharePoint, and it's humming along great. So we support both on-prem and in the cloud, which is also how we can go up to the more confidential networks, the secret squirrel stuff.
Adam, a question from Mark at the bottom there.
Is it possible for it to work completely out of ServiceNow without any other systems like SharePoint being involved? Absolutely. So the second use case I showed you, where we're looking at stuff inside the viewer, that did not leverage any SharePoint at all. It still was able to generate documents, and then you can go in, you can sign, you can do everything inside ServiceNow without using SharePoint at all. So we have another customer who's doing the same thing because, so I'm going to skip the if not, why not, because we can. And I think that's it for questions.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank all of our participants as well as our speakers for being with us today. If you have any further questions or would like to request more information, please feel free to reach out. Thank you again and have a great day.